Hey, 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 and welcome back to the Fully Booked Photographer podcast. And not but an hour ago, I saw Santa Claus on a sleigh head off into the night. He's passing by the moon because it's Christmas Day.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Sorry.
So we hope you are having an amazing Christmas. We hope that Santa Claus brought you exactly what you wanted for Christmas, because you were either a very good boy or a very good girl, because we know that there's no naughty people listen to this podcast. So let us talk about, we're going to have a bit of fun today, because we're going to talk about our favorite podcast of the year, because it's hard to believe, guys, we're nearly a year at this. I think this is podcast number 50, I think.
52, I think.
No, it's not 52. 52 doesn't go out until the 8th of January, I believe. So Jeanine, just talk to us. What was your favorite podcast of the year and why?
You guys will never guess my favorite podcast because you probably think I would choose something fluffy or one where I got to talk a lot. But it wasn't one of those. It wasn't Think Pink or Christmas or anything like that. So my favorite episode was episode 42. And that was where we were initially talking about how we shoot to sell, which I think is very important in the studio. And it's one of, when we made that when that light bulb went off for us here, for me here, it really changed the way we structured our sessions. And we really put a focus on, especially, and I find this to be a problem for many themed photographers, people who photograph themes. They come up with this idea because they think it's a great idea, but they don't have anything to sell from it, you know? And so that's when people end up just asking for all the digital images because you don't relate a product to that specific session. And so shooting to sell it revolutionizes your studio and the money that you can make from your sessions. And so to me, it was a very important topic to cover. And then Ronan had to throw in his little wrench to it, which I found to be very amusing because, you know, every episode Ronan tries to get Brad and I to disagree about something. And he tries so hard and very rarely does it ever work. But this time it actually worked because he hit one of these button topics that pits a photographer against a non-photographer. And so the topic came up about being creative in a photo session. And my opinion was different than Brad's. And so I thought it was interesting. I think it's interesting when you're able to hear different people's points of views. Because that's one of our big things in the Fully Booked Photographer, being a difference maker. Not everybody is a difference maker the same way. We have formulas and Ronan's really big on his formulas, but the formula to your success and what's successful to you is different for everyone. And so I think difference of opinions is important. Ronan, we've had many political discussions personally, right? Not on the podcast. But that's how we grow. You know, if everybody guessed each other and everybody always agreed with each other, then you never hear other points of views. You just stay stagnant in where you're at. So I have always loved having differences of opinions, and I think it's important to hear them. So that podcast was my favorite for multiple reasons. I thought it was a very important topic that I don't think a lot of photographers think about. What am I actually going to sell from the session, and how can I photograph for it? But then secondary, I just love the fact that we actually were able to disagree about something and present two different points of views on a topic, because we don't do that very often. So there you go.
Because there's no right answer, right, Jeanine? And that's what you're talking about. Like it's what's right for one person is not right for another. And we talk about this all the time with the Fully Booked Photographer, in that, you know, no one should enforce their definition of success on you, because only you know what you define success to be. And that's a key, it's a key mindset. And it's also a mindset of being willing to not attach your ego to your opinion either, right? And respect that, you know what, you mightn't be right, or you might be right. But isn't it important to at least consider other things? Because otherwise we end up in this spiral of confirmation bias. You know, we see it all the time, don't we?
We do see it all the time, especially on social media. You see it a lot, the confirmation bias.
And
we
the
want people to
algorithms.
think. That's you, right, Ronan? You're the thought provocateur. So, and as a group, we do want people to think and come to their own to think about different ideas and then come to a conclusion that works for them and pushes their business forward. And if you're only listening to people who think like you, it's not really a way to move forward. You just stagnate.
And you just said
you have to be open-minded. You know, we encourage that a lot, and if you're not open-minded, then you're never going to change. And if you believe that, you know, that won't work or this won't work, we see that all the time with members from all over the world too, don't we? Like, it's like, oh, that won't work in my area. That won't work for my studio because I'm whatever. You know, so it's having that. The best thing you can do is when you're presented with an opportunity is to have an open mind and say, I wonder, will that work for me? And the only way to know if it will is to try it and test it and give it a fair test and then decide. So yeah, it's a really important, I just wanted to add that in because it is important what you're talking about.
So Jonathan, how do you, like when you talk about that, how do you manage this sort of shiny object syndrome? So if you have to be open-minded and test everything, right, how do you not end up testing a whole load of stuff and just follow what you think is a silver bullet, or that's a shiny new idea over there, let's do that?
Because you gotta test one thing at a time, baby. Identify the biggest problem that you think you have. Have a look at the potential solutions, pick one, implement, test, measure the results, make a decision. If it fails, ask yourself, have you spent enough time testing it? And do you have enough of a sample size to know if it worked? And if it doesn't fail, keep doing it. Great. Then pick the next problem area and solve that. One step at a time.
All right. So seeing as you're talking, Jonathan, tell us about your favourite podcast of the year.
Oh dear. I didn't mean to derail Jeanine talking about hers, but it was interesting what you were discussing. So my favourite podcast of the year is episode 12, Return of the Jonathan. I'm only joking. Trying to do a Star Wars analogy there. But episode 12 is Why Photographers Hate Marketing and How to Love It. And I remember on that podcast, at the time I had COVID. And I had big COVID brain. And at the time there was like some photography educators out there talking about how Facebook ads don't work when it comes to finding high paying clients. And even though it shouldn't irk me, it did irk me, because these people who were saying this probably have never run a Facebook ad in their life, or they tried and they failed because they don't know what they're doing. And then they have an opinion that they're spreading false information. I remember being very, very irked by it. So my COVID brain took over, and we discussed why Facebook ads do work for photographers and talked about the abundance of proof that they can generate people who will invest with you, like our fabulous mentors prove on a day-to-day basis and our members prove on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I really enjoyed that podcast, even though I had COVID at the time, because it was John O' Let Loose, which doesn't happen that often.
So very dove-like of Jonathan, wasn't it, Brad? Do you remember that podcast?
Vaguely. I have a vague recollection of them all. They all merge together. There's no... I'm very visual, and the visual elements of all our podcasts are exactly the same. I look at the same three people. I'm trying to... when I was thinking of this, I'll visualize the podcast, and I'm seeing Ronan and Jonathan and Jeanine, and I see them for like 3 hours a day anyway. It's really hard to place them. So when I'm looking at the titles of the podcasts, there was a few that jumped out. And I do remember Jonathan having COVID brain. That's the part that I remember, and Jonathan going off on one, and rightly so, because it's confirmation bias again, isn't it? It's this failed for me, so I want it to fail. I want no one else to succeed, because if it succeeds, then I'm a failure, not Facebook ads. And you know, everyone wants Facebook ads to fail because nobody likes admitting when they've failed themselves. So.
What do you think of that, Jeanine?
No, Yeah, it's interesting. It is funny how we both picked a confirmation biased episode. But yeah, I remember Jonathan on COVID Brain. He was very fiery.
His inner eagle was trying to come out, obviously. The inner eagle saw it as an opportunity to take out the dove.
My 15% eagle.
Your 15% eagle came out. Well, you know what's interesting though is when Jonathan is passionate about a topic, he does get fiery, and I like that because it fires him up because he cares so much about our members and the photographers we're trying to help. And so when he sees a common, I don't know if error is the right word, when he sees a common misconception in the industry and by our members that he knows the answer to, and he knows if people would just listen, kind of like a parent sometimes with our kids, right? If they would just listen, we know the result would be so much better. But sometimes they have to fail before they realize that the parent was right all along. And so Jonathan, I think, feels that sometimes because he's very caring about all of our members and our listeners, and he doesn't want them to fail. He wants them to succeed. And so it fires him up when he sees those misconceptions take hold.
So, Jonathan, maybe there's a lesson from Christmas in how to succeed with that strategy and get more of our members to do as they should.
You just said something and I went, zoom, I have no idea what you just said.
I haven't explained it yet. So maybe there's a lesson from Christmas that might be an answer or a solution
I'm
to
afraid.
this. So, the lesson is maybe you should put a corrugated box around what we teach. Because the kids at Christmas always end up taking the toys out of the corrugated boxes and playing with the corrugated boxes and turning it into what they want it to be.
So what Market says, Facebook ads definitely don't work for photographers. Come join the program, but we're going to teach Facebook ads when you get inside.
Maybe that's the strategy.
Oh, we digress again.
So why corrugated? That was the thing I fixated the most on that. Corrugated? Like corrugated metal. Like where it's like wavy.
No,
that's what corrugated is.
No, all those brown boxes, and they can come in white as well, that you get your toys in. They're made out of what's called...
You mean a present?
Cardboard box. The cardboard box.
Yeah, the big ones, the brown ones, like the Amazon deliver your stuff in. That's a corrugated box.
What your 3XM folio boxes come in?
A big cardboard box.
Cardboard box.
They're called corrugated boxes.
Corrugated boxes.
No,
corrugated. Corrugated is the wavy metal.
Packaging industry. We know. We have a brand in the packaging industry.
I googled the word corrugated, and I'm looking at corrugated metal right now.
No,
look.
Google corrugated boxes and you'll see what I'm talking about.
You're wrong.
So there we are. There's an example of using jargon, right? So because we're in the packaging industry, we've used some jargon there that doesn't connect with you guys, right? And
yes, you are correct. I've put boxes after corrugated.
Our members use this all the time with their clients, right? That we use internal jargon, right? And our clients have no idea what we're talking about, nor do they care. So I'm glad, Brad.
Back around, Ronan. I like it.
All I was thinking about when you said corrugated, I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, did Ronan put presents out and then put metal around them? Keep Jonathan away from getting his presents on Christmas morning. Was Jonathan playing with metal in metal boxes?
But isn't there a key lesson here that how language is so important?
It is.
We might use words that mean exactly what we know what it means, but if the person doesn't understand what it means because they haven't heard it before, or we're using jargon, that it just derails the whole thing.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm going to start using corrugated boxes in my own vocabulary now.
Well, isn't it great, Brad? Like I regard a day as a successful day when I learn something new.
Yeah.
So you've learned something new today. You now know what a corrugated box is. So, Brad, tell us about your favorite episode of the year.
It's not this one. Just kidding.
Yes. So my favorite episode is episode number 36. Ronan Revenge of Ronan. Ronan Strikes Back.
Another Star Wars.
Yeah. So episode 36 is named "Are You a Difference Maker, a Photographer, or Both?" And I enjoy that podcast. But there's a selfish reason why I enjoy the podcast, and there's a very unselfish reason why I enjoy it as well. It kind of merges together. The unselfish reason is that you are not in the driving seat, and you're the one doing most of the talking, which is quite rare. Normally, the three of us kind of handle the bulk of the talking, and you facilitate those conversations. And in that one, me and Jeanine, Jonathan wasn't here as he was away. We're questioning you on your new book that you've been writing for the past few months. That we've had many podcast episodes talking about all the lenses and how that applies to your business, and that they all were your ideas. So, and I like that because I like seeing you very, very passionate about something. Because you were more passionate in that episode than I think you've been in previous.
More than ever before.
Yeah, more than ever before. And I also think there's good learning in that episode because it's interesting to understand your perspective. I think it allows our listeners to understand your reason, your why, your angle about why the fully booked photography even exists, why we're here having this podcast, why you wrote the book, why we have the membership, because it ties it all into what you hope to achieve. Just like on one of our previous podcasts in the year about vision and mission, the book, the podcast, they're all little mission elements. It was nice for you to talk about your mission that ties into your overall vision.
So, Jeanine, do you remember why Brad really loved that podcast from his own perspective?
I remember interviewing you, but I don't remember the specific of what you might be referring to.
He came up with a very, 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 very clever quote that probably captured what we hadn't talked about before. Brad.
Yes. It's nice to know that you know exactly what my selfish answer is. But Ronan was talking about helping the industry and not fixing the industry photographically, fixing it in a business sense. And after that entire conversation and knowing you for so long, that fixing the business side of our industry isn't what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to fix the soul of it. And I said that much better on that podcast than I have done right here because it was part of the conversation, was all tied in together. But I enjoyed that epiphany because it was an epiphany for me in that moment. I think we all kind of connected with it very well. And it worked. Sorry you missed it, Jonathan.
Yeah. Is that where the difference maker came from?
Maybe. No.
No, I think the difference maker has been around for quite some time. Because I was looking back at something that I wrote, or I not wrote, but a post I put on Facebook back in 2019, and I was talking about difference makers. But it was
no. But I think in that podcast episode, in that quote, now I'm remembering it. Brad did say I remember something about this now. Now I'm going to go back and listen because it came up. I feel like again in that podcast where he said, "Ronan, you're not trying." That you're trying to affect the soul of the industry and really make a difference to be a difference maker and have photographers be difference makers. I don't know. I feel like that rang into that podcast too. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident I coined the term.
Okay. I'll have to get that Facebook post out where I wrote it before we even knew each other, Brad.
Fake news, Ronan. But mine's on a podcast. Mine's audio. Posts can be manipulated.
I love it. I don't mind who created it. It captures beautifully our mission and our vision.
It does, and it is our first podcast to have difference maker in the title, and I think that was coming on the back of another podcast we were talking about saying that photographer isn't the right term anymore. Photographer just means...
Yes, that's what I'm remembering.
Was that this podcast or a different one? I think it was one previous.
Okay.
I think we were discussing
That's what I'm remembering. That's what I'm remembering. That was a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. But the interesting thing is that the Difference Maker title for the book was out about 6 months ago, I think.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Oh my goodness.
We haven't asked you what's your favorite podcast.
Ronan, enough of that. What's your favorite podcast episode? Oh, Jolly Maker.
Guess.
Put down the eggnog.
Hold on.
And tell us your favorite episode.
Before Ronan tells us his favorite episode, I want to just share this with the audience and listenership. So, when we first decided to launch this podcast, I think Brad and Jeanine brought the idea to the table, or Brad did, or one of them.
They did.
Both of them. I'm not sure which.
They both brought it. I remember together. But
and Ronan and I were probably very, very much against it at the time. We couldn't see the value in it. We couldn't. It was like a lot of work for what reason, and a lot of stuff. So I want our listeners to send us an email. Send it to Jonathan, Jonathan, at thefullybookedphotographer.com. And in the subject line, put, I love the podcast. And in the subject or in the message body say, hi Jonathan, I love listening to the podcast. Please don't get rid of it. And then who it's from. Because I'd love to know how many listeners, like, how would your world change if this podcast just suddenly disappeared?
That's foreboding on Christmas Day.
It is. You spend too much time with Ronan.
Yeah.
Me? What do you mean?
It's Christmas Day. Be cheerful.
I'm cheerful.
How about send Santa a Christmas email saying why you love the Fully Booked Photographer podcast and would want it in your stocking this Christmas.
Anyway, I just have to get that in there because it's curious. I'm curious if I get any emails now. If you're looking on St. Stephen's Day or Boxing Day, as they call it in the UK, and I don't know what they call it in America, but the 26th of December maybe. I'm looking forward to reading all your emails.
That's a good point. Jeanine, what do you call the day after?
We don't
Christmas
have it.
Day
It's not a US holiday.
Okay.
Oh.
I could never understand why in Britain, the UK, that they call it Boxing Day, because Christmas is supposedly about connecting with family and celebrating each other and having fun together, and to be just having boxing the head off each other just does not make sense to me. Why you would have a day called Boxing Day? Beyond me.
We won't go down that rabbit hole. Come on.
So
we want to ask you now, Ronan. So what is your favorite episode for the past year for the Fully Booked Photographer?
Well,
Go.
I've so many of them. I don't know which one to pick. But if I was to pick one, just one, the one episode I would pick is the revolution the photography industry needs.
What episode is that?
It's episode 44, so it's one of the most recent ones we've done.
So, Ronan, when you think about episode 44 and you think about everything that we discussed on episode 44, and you think about all of the conversation that we had on that podcast, what's the one thing, the one conversation we had in that podcast episode that stands out, that makes episode 44 your favorite episode from the Fully Booked Photographer podcast?
That unless you use the art and science of photography to make a difference to people and hence be a difference maker, AI is going to eat your lunch, your dinner, and your breakfast. Not just today, but every day. Including your Christmas dinner.
It was one of my favorite episodes as well. So I couldn't pick it because you picked it. But yeah, we see this all the time, and we see that when photographers make the focus about them and their art, well then they're not going to survive very long. Sorry to be morbid on Christmas Day.
No, we should be way more upbeat because the opportunity is so great. the opportunity to truly live your passion and truly make a difference. Because I believe that every photographer is like any other person, that we truly, truly, truly want to leave this planet, when we do leave it, a better place than we found it. And we want to have a purpose, and we want to, that purpose is generally around helping people, whether that's our family or other people or whatever that is, for them to achieve what they want to out of life and leave behind them the difference maker they want to be. So being a difference maker is not just about you making a difference to your client. It's the impact that person that you make a difference to has on others. And that's when this sort of expands way beyond our industry. Because if you think about it, if you even just think about simple stories we hear of people who go to a difference maker, have an experience that transforms them in whatever way that is, and then when they talk to their difference maker, photographer again, and tell them the difference it's made, but not just to them, but to everyone they interact with, that's when this becomes so powerful. And I truly believe that the reason why photographers are on this planet, on this earth, in this world, is to be a difference maker. But we haven't, the industry as a whole hasn't figured that out yet. But it will. And I know the four of us won't stop until they do. And that we are there to help you on this journey. And only by being a difference maker will you truly, truly, as Simon Sinek says, not only live your passion and be happy with your life, but then earn what you desire and deserve materially, financially as well. And that will be the end result, but that's not why you do it. So it's time to celebrate this amazing Christmas. It's time for everyone very soon to make their New Year's resolution. But Christmas Day is a day of gifting, right, Jonathan? So I think you want to talk about the Mifki and what a gift it is.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. Yes. Amazing, the Mifki. It's the most incredible free gift ever. That's what it stands for. MIFGE. Mifki. So, today, Christmas Day, if you're sitting listening to us, this wonderful foursome, four amigos, four musketeers, we have the most incredible free gift ever for you. Because when you say maybe, that's all you have to say. Just say maybe and subscribe to a free 30-day trial of the Fully Booked Engine, which is the most powerful marketing platform on the planet for helping photographers to fast track their marketing and business success. We are going to gift you 3 incredible things. Number 1, we're going to gift you free lifetime access to the Fully Booked Challenge training, which shows you how to implement and deploy our Facebook ad strategy that has generated in excess of $3 million for our members. We are going to, number 2, give you free lifetime access to the community of like-minded photographers where you can ask questions, network with other photographers around the world, and work with the mentors to overcome some of your biggest challenges. And free gift number 3, we're going to give you free lifetime access to the weekly call every Monday on Zoom, where you can come onto that live Zoom call and say hello to Brad, Jeanine, Ronan, and myself, and ask us whatever questions you have about that Facebook ad strategy that you're stuck on, that you need help overcoming and fixing, so that you can become a fully booked photographer. And the reason why we're so generous and why we're doing this is we truly, as Ronan said, we want to be difference makers in your life and your business. We believe that you, when you see the light, that you will realize how much of a difference maker you are. And we know that when we help you to become a successful difference maker, that you will want to use the Fully Booked engine for life because it's the best marketing software for photographers in the industry. And we know that you will want to join our Inner Hive program and become a member of the most incredible community of difference makers that there is out there in our industry. So just click the link or the button below, say maybe, and get the Mifki today.
And don't
Merry
forget,
Christmas.
that Christmas is a time of giving. So I want you to picture now your very best friend who's also a photographer, who can go on this Mifki journey with you to become fully booked. And I want you to message them now on Christmas Day and say, Happy Christmas. I got a gift from the Fully Booked photographer, this Mifki. I want to give this to you too. And just send it to them. So, Jeanine, I'm curious, what are you having for Christmas dinner?
So Christmas dinner is at my sister's house this year. And so she's doing a prime rib. I am bringing the appetizer. So I'm doing the charcuterie board in a Christmas theme is what I am bringing. And then my mom is doing that. We're all kind of contributing. But the main dish is a prime rib. And then lots of yum.
Thought you'd be having duck.
No, nobody is eating duck on Christmas. What is wrong with you? Stop it. We do not eat duck. Ducks are sacred animals.
So, Brad, what about you? What are you having for Christmas dinner?
Mixed meats, Ronan. It'd be turkey and lamb. So arguably the worst meat and the best meat. Turkey's terrible. I'll fight anybody over that. Turkey is the worst meat. I'll still eat it. It's still nice, still tasty, but worst meat.
So, Jonathan, apart from a bag of chips, what will you be having?
The bread.
Not sure yet.
He'll
We'll
eat
figure
the
it
roll.
out on the day.
A bread roll, maybe? Maybe a bit
We'll
more?
see.
You would eat my mac and cheese, Jonathan.
We'll see.
Hey, Jeanine,
So-
do you call spaghetti noodles?
No. Chinese
So
food.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be.
It's pasta.
Yeah.
I'm not having spaghetti or noodles. What I'm having is, I love turkey. This disagree with Brad. Breasts of turkey cut up with cranberry sauce, but you have to have the stuffing with loads of onion in it as well. And peas and carrots and garlic potato and roast potato and mashed potato. It's,
Makes it Irish. How many forms of potatoes
It's
can you
so
have at your
big.
dinner?
with some bacon. And you know what I do every St. Stephen's morning or Boxing Day for Brad? I have a turkey and stuffing sandwich for breakfast.
Remember that time at Future Photography where we cooked dinner for some people? I don't know if Jeanine had arrived yet. Brad had. And Mary Fitz-Taylor and Jamie Hayes were there, and Steve Saporito was arriving. And he said, Jesus, I know I'm in Ireland because there's about 4 different types of potatoes here on the plate.
That was at the dinner we had.
Yes.
That wasn't the dinner, but the dinner I had.
You were there, yeah.
There was like 7 different types of potatoes at the plate. It was awesome. Luckily, I love potatoes any way you cook them. So, we're all good.
There we go. So we're wishing you all a very happy and peaceful and loving Christmas. And we look forward to seeing you on New Year's Day for the next podcast, when we'll be bringing you the podcast that day too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it's even called, but tune in and you'll find out. Happy Christmas to you all. Bye for now.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Hasta luego. Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad.